Recent studies show that nearly half of all employers are preparing and have the budgets for off-cycle pay adjustments and promotions upcoming. And even though job growth seems to be slowing, again, these budgets are there. But just because the money is there does not mean that that money is going to be available to you if you don't advocate for yourself in the right way. In today's episode, we have Sherrika Sanders. As CEO and owner of Transform the GAAP, she helps accounting teams increase productivity and efficiency by showing them how to streamline processes, reconcile the balance sheet, and other technical skills. She teaches accountants how to advance their careers from stagnation to strategic growth. In our conversation, we're going to talk about the importance of asking for your promotion, ways to communicate facts over feelings, and how to advocate for yourself professionally. If you enjoyed today's episode, make sure to like and subscribe to make sure you don't miss a future episode. Thank you so much for joining me, Sherrika. I'm so happy to talk with you this morning.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate you, and I appreciate the voice that you're giving the people within the corporate space who don't really know how to approach things like this. And a lot of times you can't go to your manager. Sometimes you can't go to HR, but to know that there is a platform that they can go to for answers is awesome. So I appreciate your whole zhush.
I appreciate that. I feel that similar to what I do on the HR side, you do that for the accounting side. So I think there's a lot of alliances and similarities in what you and I do. So thank you for the work that you do as well. It's really, really powerful. And I just have to pause here and say, I absolutely love the name. Transform the GAAP is ingenious. So I love it. I absolutely love it.
Thank you. I appreciate it. I wanted a name when I was deciding to go into entrepreneurship. I wanted a name, something that said transformation. And I also wanted something that was accounting related to kind of for that nod to that 15 years as a corporate accountant, but also it's like, hey, I'm still here kind of thing.
Yeah.
But I have to give credit to my husband. I won't even tell you the stuff that I was coming up with, but he is the one who suggested this one. And I was like, that's
it. It's awesome. I absolutely love it. It's so clear. And if you're an accounting professional and you see the name, you get it. You absolutely get it. I love that.
Thank you.
So today we're talking about advocating for ourselves, helping our listeners to advocate for themselves, and asking for promotions when it's warranted. So let's kind of back up a little bit. How did this become a topic that you like to share and empower other professionals to do?
Yeah, so it's one that's been near and dear to me throughout my career. One of the things that, and I'm not going to say it's just me, I think a lot of people feel like this, like if you want a promotion and you actually want a decent raise with it, you have to leave and go to somewhere else, because when you try to do it within your same company, they tend to lowball you and you're not really happy with it. But I realized, like, I'm not going to keep moving around. The money is there. And this is kind of a side note, especially from being in accounting. Even if they tell you the money is not there, and they could be right, they can find it. Anything that they want to do, whether it's promoting an employee, whether it's a new business, anything that a company wants to do, they will figure it out. Just like in your own personal life, if it's something in your budget and you like, we have to get this done, you're going to figure it out. They can too. And if they value you as an employee, the budget is going to be the last thing or the last hindrance to your getting that promotion. But for me, it started with one particular organization that I was with, and they came to me. And I like to give this example because, number one, they came to me. So it looks, it's not something I even asked for. Number two, we were about to enter a hiring freeze. And they said, we want to make sure that we get this done for you, because if we wait any longer, it won't happen, because we're entering this freeze. Because about maybe 2 or 3 months before this happened, we'd had a major layoff. And so I'm like, oh, so I'm really appreciative, that you thought of me, that you want to make sure you get it done before this freeze comes into place. But I also have to remember, and we also have to remember, we're still providing them a service. We're still giving them our time, our knowledge, our expertise. So while I appreciate the sentiment, I'm the prize, you know?
Yeah.
And so we have to remember that. And they presented me with the increase. I told them, thank you. Immediately I was like, nah, this isn't it. But, and kind of touching a little bit on the facts versus feelings that you mentioned earlier, I could have handled that completely different than I did. I could have been like, what? This is like, you have to do better than this, because that would have been all feelings coming out. But what I did, I kept a cool head and I was like, okay, thank you. I appreciate it. I didn't mention anything about having an issue with the salary. And we parted ways. That same day, I went home. I looked on salary.com. I got, okay, for a person with my skill set in my city doing what I do, because we all know that before we get that promotion, we're already doing the job. And
Right.
so, doing what I do, what is their salary range? And it was in line with what I wanted. I also, because another thing too, keep up with all of your kudos, all of the things you've done. For me, it was a folder in my email.
Yes.
Whatever, wherever
Yes.
you need to do it, keep up with that stuff. I went back to that because you don't remember everything. I went back to that. I wrote an email, and I even did an actual paper, because we don't really use paper these days. But I put it together. Thank you for the opportunity. I really appreciate it. But based on all of these things, this is what I really feel would be more aligned with the role and what I'm doing. And I asked for them to reconsider. So I asked them to meet back up with me that next day, like, hey, and for this one, it was like, can you give me just a few minutes? Because we'd already talked about, I knew I was getting the promotion and all the things. We didn't need a long, drawn out conversation. I presented him what I had, and I said, I also have this in email if you want me to just send it to you. And he was kind of like, I don't think it'll happen, but that's fine. I'll send it and we'll just see what happens. And about a week later, they came back and had accepted my counter. Um, and with this particular company, I had to do that every time. I was promoted, I think 3 times in that company. And each time I had to go through this or some similar process with them. So it's that's why it's one that's so close and near and dear to me, because it's very personal for me.
It's so interesting. And when I started, I talk about my experience often on my channel. I started as an unpaid intern, and then
Mm-hmm.
I eventually became an HR department of one. But in between that part, I was working under someone else's leadership. But when I became in a department of one, essentially I was, managing the department, but I was not in the manager role. I was an HR
Right.
generalist. And so I was in
Mm-hmm.
that role for multiple years, for I think 2 years. And then I had a new CEO, and I had to do exactly what you said. I had to, because I had an assurance that I was going to be promoted, and it wasn't a promotion given.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, whoa. And so then I
Mm-hmm.
had to make my own case. And so, like you say,
Mm-hmm.
going back to my accolades, my folder that I kept in my email box, where all of these
Mm-hmm.
times where, I'm going above and beyond, because you don't send an email or you don't give an
Right.
accolade for doing normal work. You send the email.
Right.
So you want to keep those things. It's really important. And I think that's a point that a lot of people miss. I want to make sure we don't miss that part. Make sure you're
Yes.
keeping your folder or any kind of record of ways that other people, it could be your supervisor, it could be other peers, it could be other leaders, telling
Yep.
you the great things that you do, because you can't remember it all in the moment.
Mm-mm. Mm-mm.
But so it's everything that you said. I resonate with it so deeply, and I know that if I resonate with it, then our listeners are going to resonate with it as well, because you're likely having to make your own cases. Going back to your story when you were talking about your experiences of what happened and your ability to keep a level head, keep a cool head once you got that initial response, I think is very key, because it goes against what we would typically do maybe in our personal lives, or what we would just automatically do. So how were you able to keep that cool head?
Honestly, and this one would be more for a specific group of people. Uh, because ideally, you're correct. It would be to see that and be like, what? Even if I didn't say it, my face, because I've been told I do not have a poker face. My face would have been like, what did you say? But I, the way I would frame it to other people, I used to always say, I'm the person that they pay me to be. And what
Mm,
that means is,
You're paying me for a service. You're paying me to come in on time. You're paying me to do a job, and you're paying me to make sure I maintain my professionalism. And because I also know that the expectation as a Black woman is for me to roll the neck and the finger and all of that other stuff, I'm just not going to give you that satisfaction. And
Yeah.
it's knowing those things that causes me to hold on and to hold it. And some people are like, well, I don't, I'm more quick temper. I don't, in my personal life, that is not at all the case. In my personal life, what did you say? But my that's the person you're paying me to be.
Yeah.
That is that if I, and also knowing that if I respond with my feelings, if I respond with my emotions, I didn't just mess it up for me. I've messed it up for other, not only women, but Black women, because now I'm uh, a victim to the stereotype.
Yeah.
And they're going to keep it going with others. Wherein if you have somebody who does respond the way that they think, and then you have me, at least they're like, okay, well, we can't put everybody in one box. And
Yeah.
that was my thing, especially in a role in an area like accounting that's primarily male dominated, white male dominated. I have to keep my head. I have to keep a cool head, and I have to make sure that you're listening to me and that I'm getting it done.
Mhm.
So it's that has always kind of fueled my, all right, Sherrika, just if you can get what you want, you just have to make sure you play the game.
And I think a lot of it also boils down to what everything that you said, I think is wrapped in awareness. Like you're aware of the industry that you're in, you are aware of who you are, you're aware of their perceptions, of their biases and all these things. So I think we have to, and some people absolutely hate the fact that we have to keep these things in consideration, but like
Hmm.
you mentioned, if you are desiring that promotion, that next step, you have to navigate the waters appropriately. I mean, you
Yeah.
will get there, and that's not to
Yeah.
say you have to take up with harassment, take up bullying, be subjected to things that are diminishing you as a person. Well, that's not what we're
Hmm.
saying at all.
Right.
But what we
Right.
are saying is when there are things that are happening well, like something as insignificant or something that may seem as trivial to some as asking for a
Right.
promotion, it's not trivial. It's important. And so the way we handle it is so important. I know we have so I work in HR, and even my day job, we do interviews and things like that. And what I watch to see is it's great. Everyone can be happy and cordial and professional when things go their way. I
Hmm.
want to see who you are when things don't go your way. I want to see
Hmm.
what do you do if things don't go exactly as you planned. How do you bounce back from it? How do you
Right.
readjust? How do you renegotiate? So all the things you share here are fantastic tips. Fantastic tips.
Thank you. And I even want to add to that, to piggyback on the point that you just made. This is not asking you to not be who you are, because you
Yes.
always want to be authentic to yourself, show up for yourself. But we all know that what professionalism means. And professionalism is not yelling, it's not cursing them out, it's not being subjected to our feelings. And as adults, we have to learn, we have to hold those boundaries in all aspects of life, not just personal, not just professional, but personal as well. And so it's not saying, oh, you can't be you, but you being you shouldn't also be every time somebody says something to me that I don't like, I pop off, so to speak, because then that's some other things that we need to talk about.
Mm-hmm.
But so yeah, I just wanted to kind of piggyback on your statement of it's not just accepting whatever somebody throws at you, mistreatment, but it is or not being who you are, but it is just knowing the setting that you're in and making sure that if you really want, because once you get those stigma, it's really, really hard to lose it. I remember one time I went for a job interview, and it was an accounting based role. And what they wanted was, I worked with people in Canada at the time, and this was related to Canada. I managed a team in Canada, but they wanted to initiate some accounting policies using what they call Canadian GAAP or IFRS. And I know I'm speaking accounting terms, but it was something I hadn't done before. And so I remember I knew in the interview I didn't get the position, but I remember the lady told me in the interview, she said, I know that you would be great for this job. I just don't have the time to train you for it. I know that you can do it. She said, I've already checked you out. And I was like, check me out. She's like, yeah, I've already asked people about you. I still don't know who she knew that I knew.
Wow.
But she had already done some research and asked other people that I worked with in, I don't know, current company, prior companies where about me. She's like, yeah, I've already checked you out. I already know you can definitely do this job. I just don't have the bandwidth right now to train you for it. And so that to me was a reminder that this world is so big, but it's not.
That's right.
And certain things follow you. So you have to be aware that when those situations come, remember that like you don't want this stigma attached to you 5 years later, or, when you really want that big promotion and somebody brings up something from your past.
That's exactly right. Your reputation really does precede you. And that's for all of us.
Mm-hmm.
So that's a very good point we don't want to miss out on. Yes. So in your experience where you were talking about ways that you were able to put together your report, so to speak, your receipts when it came to promote, to present to the powers that be that it was time for your promotion, I had to do the same. For me, you mentioned going to salary.com to get your salary ranges that will be appropriate. Another place that'll be helpful to go is the Bureau of Labor Statistics, the occupational handbook of OOH. Is what it stands for. But that's a great place to also go because where you're going to get information specifically to your role, but you can also segment it down to your geographic region. That'll be really helpful information to show them like, listen, this is what is appropriate. So going back, if you can maybe kind of go back and kind of give a few different steps for if there's someone who's watching and they're in this space right now and they just got the initial no / not yet / let me think about it. What do you suggest that they do?
Two things. One, just real quick, going back on pulling that information that I had to pull for me. If you're already in a leadership type role, keep a kudos, because I call my folder kudos.
Yes.
Keep a kudos folder for your team too, not just for your things, but for your team, because that same process that I had to do for myself, I had to do it for one of the employees on my team because I felt like she was doing promotion and they were denying it. And I didn't feel like there was a reason for it. And so I had to help build her receipts for that same reason. So, and actually even kind of segued into your question of that no, and I'll give both examples. For her, I'll give hers and then I'll give mine. For her, as a manager going to ask for a promotion for my team, for someone on my team, I remember the CFO saying, I don't see her. And she worked really hard, but she was highly introverted. She really didn't say much. But that doesn't negate the fact that she was a hard worker. She was somebody I could rely on. She did what she did very well. And I felt like she should be compensated for that and it shouldn't be taken from her just because she's not the loudest one in the room. And so I had a conversation with her because I didn't tell her initially that I was going to ask them for this for her on her behalf. And so I had a conversation with her and I said, I asked for this. He told me he doesn't see you. I said, so we're going to make sure that you're seen. And so what we did is I said, for these things that you're handling, when the questions come, I want you to be the one to answer. When they send the emails about the project, I want you to be the point of contact, the one to raise your hand, because I want to make sure that they see the impact that you're making. And we did that. And it was maybe a couple of months and she was able to get that promotion. Now, granted, it did make her nervous because it was out of her comfort zone. But I also told her, like, this isn't just something with this company. This is anywhere you go, they're going to take advantage of that. And so, I'll support you 100%. If we're in the room together and you need me to tag in, then tag me in. But I want you to get comfortable with showing up and using your voice, because otherwise you're always going to find yourself stuck in a position and ultimately becoming frustrated. And you're a really great employee. So that was how I handle it for my team. For me, if I go to, first of all, if you're going to go ask for that promotion, it's not a, hey, you have 10 minutes so we can have a quick,
Right.
mm-mm.
Right.
Let's schedule some time.
Yes.
Because one, we need to make sure we have all of our support. We want to have our receipts, so to speak, what we've done, why we feel we're ready for it. Even the goals that we have while we're in that next role, some things that we want to attain, and how we feel like being in that next role will help us with those things. And you always want to make sure that when you ask, you're not just talking about your personal, this can give me more money and me be me. You have to include how it will impact your organization, the positive impact that the role will have, or you being in that role will have on the organization. But you do all these things, you sit down, you have the meeting, and they're like, either no, we don't think you're ready, or no, we don't have the money, or it needs to be, first of all, it needs to be a reason. Just saying no, again, we want to keep our cool. We want to maintain our professionalism and not get all caught up in our feelings. But if it's just an outright no, can you give me some reasons why? Because it's obviously some things I need to work on. Mm-hmm. So can we call out what those things are, so I know, when the next opportunity comes, that I've either met the mark or not, but I know what I need to work on to get there. So that's the first thing. It can't just be a no. Like, be okay advocating for yourself to say, can you explain why? Can you give me some reasons why? Because if they can't give you any reasons why, for me, I think it's time to take it up to the next level, to the next person, and say, hey, I asked for this role. I was told I'm not ready, which is completely fine, but I would like to have some feedback as to why I'm not ready and what I need to do to prepare. I really want to grow within this organization. I think this is a great company, yada, 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 because you are owed that. And if you're told no, either because of budgetary or whatever, when you're given your reasons for the no, then what you want to do is say, okay, same thing. What are some things that I can do to get to that point, number one? But then, because you have those reasons, now let's put these into a time specific plan.
Yes.
6 months, 3 months, whatever that case is. And within the next 3 months, within the next 6 months, if I have accomplished these milestones, if I have met these goals, then can we agree that this is the promotion or this is the increase that I can get? And go ahead and write it all out. Be specific with your amount, because you don't want to say, oh, I get an increase. Then they come back with $2,000 and you're like, well, wait a minute. I just did all the things. Mm-hmm. And now, you're just throwing something at me just to say you did something. So go ahead and establish that amount. So now everyone is being held accountable. And they know that if you've accomplished these things, one, you're now looking even better as an employee. And there's no denying the fact that you've earned this thing that you're asking for. So make sure you have that plan of, what is it that I need to do? Okay, and once I'm doing these things, or once I have done these things, what is the amount, or what is that title? What does that look like for me? So then you can come back with your same folder or whatever. And well, even let me step back a minute. After having that conversation, follow it up with an email.
Yes.
Everything in writing. An email is writing. And even if they don't respond, you still have it in writing, because the thing is, if it's not true, they're going to respond and say, oh no, wait a minute, that's not what we talked about. But send it in writing. And if you're comfortable, say, hey, do you mind if I copy HR on this? So I can make sure that it's in, because any real manager shouldn't have a problem with that. They shouldn't have a problem being held to their word and saying, if you do these things, if you're really making this commitment, then it's my job to make sure I uphold my end of the bargain. So when you leave that conversation, send a follow-up. Thank you for your time today. We talked about blah, blah, blah. You said I wasn't ready for these reasons. These are the things that we talked about my working on by this date with this level of increase. Mm-hmm. Thank you for your time. And if you can meet in intervals throughout that time, even better. but make sure you're tracking, and when you check off those boxes, because again, when you go back, however many, whatever that time frame is, you want to be able to say, hey, these are the things we talked about. These are the things I've done, plus these things. It's time.
Yes, yes. Those are, I love those steps. And I love the fact that you are also advocating for others on your team. It's so important. And I think because my audience is mostly HR departments of one, we don't have the benefit of having anyone to advocate for us. Oftentimes, because our work is not visible, and what you talked about, helping your team member to be more, you didn't use the word visible, but when I talk about with my clients, I'm often telling them, you've got to be visible, because if no one else sees what you do, then it's going to be really, really difficult to make that ask or make that request or whatever you want to call it. I think it's really important to realize that in departments that are not sales or not, forward facing, customer facing, accounting, HR, sometimes we're not noticed until something goes wrong. If something goes wrong, if we miss a deadline, if we don't get something done, they notice what we do then. But it's more along the lines, if we do our job well, then we're not noticed. And so it's almost like that works against us, because they don't realize the reason why things are going so well is because we're doing our job so well. It's such a weird dynamic in the accounting side and on the HR side. But that's why it's so important to have your kudos folder. You're collecting your information on when people have noticed that you've gone above and beyond on a variety of projects or tasks and things that you're working on. But also you must be visible, because they don't, I don't want to say they don't appreciate the work that we do, but I just think it's just, they don't think about it. It's just like breathing. Like, you just do it. You don't think about breathing. It's just there. And so because of that, we have to make what we do visible. So those are excellent points that you gave for your team member that HR leaders can also think of, making sure that you don't work, in isolation, that people see you, that you're not just staying at your desk and keeping your head down and just getting your work done. People must see the work that you're doing. So that's excellent points. I love that.
Thank you. Yeah.
So, as we close up our time today, are there any closing thoughts that you want to leave anyone with if they're in that space where they're ready for the next promotion and they're going to take these tips that we talked about today to position themselves for that next opportunity?
Two. One, I fully believe that you miss all the opportunities you don't take.
Yes.
And so show up for yourself, because 9 times out of 10, nobody else is going to do it. And it's honestly not about your qualifications, especially now. It seems like as the years go on, your skill set is less important than you just showing up who you are, because you can train a skill set. You can teach it, you can learn it, you can go to school, but you can't train personality, you can't train attitude, you can't make a person be who you want them to be. And so I'm saying that to say that it's not about getting what you deserve. You don't get what you deserve, but you do get what you prepare for. You do get what you expect. And so make sure that you're showing up. Now, don't show up for where you are now. Show up for where you want to be. Because when you start seeing yourself there, that's when they can start seeing you there as well.
I absolutely love that. I absolutely love that. Don't expect to get what you deserve. You get what you prepare for. That's a bar. I love that. That's awesome. That's awesome.
Thank you.
So, Sherrika, if anyone wants to reach out to you, whether they're, an aspiring leader, whether they want to just connect with you, whether they're in the accounting space and they want your help with optimizing what they do, where would they find you?
I am on LinkedIn as Sherrika Sanders. I'm sorry, because I normally have at least my name. It's not like that's a very commonly spelled or a common name, but on LinkedIn, Sherrika Sanders, Sherrika Sanders. And then also on my website, which links to all of my social media, as well as, if someone just wants to have a conversation, you can click that on my website as well, and which is a free call, and that's Transform the GAAP, which is GAAP, but transformthegap.com is ultimately a place that houses all of my communication. I would love to continue any conversations if anyone has any follow-up questions, because one of the reasons I left corporate is because I love the growth and development that I was able to provide my team, but I wanted to do it on my own time. And so I would love to help any way that I can.
Fantastic. Well, thank you, Sherrika, so much. This has been a conversation I have enjoyed so much, and it resonates so much. And I think it's so interesting to me how even though we're in different, departments, so to speak, you're serving the accounting side, I'm serving the HR side. There's so much synergy and so much similarity between our stories, our journeys, our timelines even. So thank you so much for being here. I really appreciate your time and all the work that you're doing to help other leaders to build careers that they would love to have. So thank you so much for that.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate the time. I appreciate the voice that you're giving the voiceless. And like I said, any other questions or anything else, you know where to find me.
Fantastic. Well, thank you so much. That ends our episode of HR Leadership Lessons. Everything we discussed today can be found at talentedteamsconsulting.com. Head to our website to access the show notes, relevant links, and all the resources you need to grow on purpose in HR leadership. If you enjoyed this episode, be sure to subscribe to the podcast and be sure to never miss future content. Drop us a review and show us some love, and show our guests some love on social media. Thanks again for listening.